All right, so this week we're going to talk about can Shane Beamer turn things around there at South Carolina and the football program. Let's talk ball.
Let's talk about
So in today's video, we will be talking about can Shane Beamer turn South Carolina around. But first of all, you probably see a new head in the room tonight, and we must introduce you to our friend, diehard South Carolina friend, Landon Lancaster. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, John. Yeah, like John said, I'm a diehard South Carolina fan. Grew up here in the upstate of South Carolina, around a bunch of Clemson fans and an occasional Georgia fan over here in Davis. But we're Gamecock through and through here. Been here, been a fan my whole life. Gone to a lot of games, followed it pretty closely throughout all my years.
So if the audio's a little bit bad between us two, forgive us for this one time.
Oh, so we got these lines going on. So that's just upgrade. We'll just consider that a free addition.
Some
right.
lasers.
Some lasers, yeah.
That's right.
So,
Start us off, Dave.
Also, I'll say on the onset, this video posted on kind of a weird day. Just kind of, some things went on that we couldn't control. But so we're just going to talk, Shane Beamer is now the head coach at South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Got rid of Will Muschamp, needed to happen. No knock on him, his family, whatever, it needed to happen. It's business. So just on the onset, what is the mindset right now of a South Carolina football fan?
Well, I keep a pretty close tab on the heartbeat of South Carolina and kind of where the fan base is, and everybody's excited. Shane Beamer is a guy, he's high energy. He's
New
young.
is always exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. New is always exciting. First time as a head coach. He's been an assistant at several big-time programs. He was part of South Carolina's program back in their tenure and stretch whenever they had those real high seasons. He left in 2010, but he was part of that. Brought a lot of energy, dream job. He said it since he's been there, dream job. And he said, I'm not going to expect you to give your trust, but I'm going to earn it. And he's proven it time and time again. High energy. Everyone loves him in Columbia.
Well, I'll ask you this. Obviously, I'm a Clemson fan. We can butt heads all day long.
Sure.
But every time a new head coach comes in, all the cultures change. Everything's different. I know you were excited when y'all got Mike Bobo. I believe it was last year's OC, talking about all the great things he did. I believe it was Colorado State. And Will Muschamp, when he first got hired, went 6-7 and 9-4 the next year. No doubt Carolina fans were extremely excited. What makes Shane Beamer different than Will Muschamp? What makes it different that the culture's truly changed, that all that he's promising is actually going to happen?
Okay, so here's the thing, and we talk about Shane Beamer this, and I'm all for Shane Beamer, but I think the biggest thing is not just Shane, it is the coaching staff he has brought along with him. Quite a good many of the coaches who he's brought along are actual South Carolina natives. Jimmy Lindsey, the defensive line coach, he is a South Carolina native. Eric Kimry, the tight ends coach, South Carolina native. Shane Beamer actually was born in Charleston, South Carolina. Now, granted, his father, we all know, Frank Beamer, a long time at Virginia Tech, spent a lot of time up there. Several others as well. Byron Jaredow, I may pronounce his name. He was a former player at South Carolina coach now. Just a lot of, he's got Connor Shaw involved, just a lot of native South Carolina and alumni of South Carolina involved. And with that comes a culture change that Mike Bobo and some of those guys they don't bring with them.
Well, I agree with that. And there's definitely something to be said right now about the culture there, and about the culture there, and about things going on. There's no doubt there's more energy, and there's more of a buy-in, and buy-in is a very important thing.
Absolutely.
And so when it comes to that, you bring in the new guy. Now, I thought Shane Beamer was one of your better options. Offensive-minded guy. He's a younger guy, and he's been under a lot of good coaches. He spent a number of years with Kirby Smart. And so there's no doubt that Shane Beamer is fairly qualified, and you got to start somewhere, and he's starting his head coaching job there at South Carolina. But just as far as immediate changes, record-wise, and wins and all, what are some expectations coming on?
I don't know, and Beamer said that if the team has done, he's given the typical coach answer. I don't want to set a record. If the team gives their effort, we feel like we give our all, we'll be happy at the end of the day. I would say the fan base is at least looking for a 500 season, at least.
That's good.
Coming off last year and the previous couple of years.
That's reasonable.
I would say, based on looking at our schedule, and we can take the time to go through that if you want to, I would say that 7-5 is reasonable, probably 6-6. We can honestly start off, as long as we win every game we can outside of Georgia, we can go 6-1 right off the get.
Sure.
And then that's a pickup of either Auburn, Florida, Missouri, or Texas A&M on the backside. So we can definitely have a chance at pulling a 7-5 season, and even an 8-5 if we go to a bowl and win that. So I think that is within reason. I don't know. Some fan members may be thinking way up there, 9-3, 10-2, which I think is out of the reach, and some are going as low as like the 4-8, 5-7. I think we're somewhere in the middle there.
Let me hit on one thing that David said, which I think is very important as far as a team and coaching. That is what the concept of what you said with being bought in, being all in, and that's one thing that I believe that made Dabo so successful.
Well, that's Dabo.
It's your players not necessarily seeing that you're a great coach, but seeing that you're bought into them as a person. And that's on and off the field. And they're college athletes, and that's one thing that I think that we forget a lot of times is these guys are 18, 19 years old.
Some of them may even be 17.
These aren't grown men, and we don't know. You don't know a lot of these players' backgrounds, whether they have father figures in their life or not, and it's more than just putting the effort into it. And that's one thing that I think Steve Spurrier really struggled at was buying into the players. It was more of what can you do for me on the field, but allowing your players to see you invested in them will cause the players to want to play harder for the coach. And I think from what I've seen so far, Shane Beamer can do that.
Well, no doubt, and you see that elsewhere. If you look at Arkansas, man, them players play for Sam Pittman.
Right.
And Arkansas top to bottom talent is not extremely good. Now, there's some ball players over there. They got one really good wide receiver, some weapons, and I don't know what their quarterback situation looks like this year, but they buy in. And you see that elsewhere as far as Clemson goes. I believe they still put the chips in and things like that. And small things. One thing that strikes me with Shane Beamer is how people-oriented he is, player-oriented, and recruit-oriented is. And in college football, that's big.
And I'll tell you to piggyback off of that, like it still blows my mind sometimes. Like we were talking about how they're 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Like I look up to Trevor Lawrence and we're like the same age.
Yep.
I look up to DJ Uyunglele and I'm like, wow, he's a year younger than me. So like you said, we're dealing with young men. We're dealing with people that they want to know that you care about them. And hats off to Shane Beamer. He's pretty much displayed that so far since he's been hired.
Right, yeah. I mean, one thing that's really impressed me about Shane, I don't know how much of it is just for the film crew, but a lot of, you see on Twitter, you see all this, him running stadiums with the team. Right. The other day they dropped a video of him pushing the wide receivers, running with them. It's just a continual, he is out there proving to them that I am everything I said I will be, and I'm going to prove it to you. So
great leaders lead by example.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And like you said about him being a good hire, and I agree, I think he was a good hire for South Carolina, and he's not necessarily the flashy hire. Like the media, who's Shane Beamer? Shane Beamer's not that big of a deal, but that's the same thing with Dabo.
Yep.
I mean, Dabo, I believe he was rated as like a D+ hire by ESPN. Who is Dabo? He's just a wide receivers coach, but sometimes those are the people that are going to lay it all on the line. They know that's their one opportunity, their one chance, and I believe though Shane Beamer might not be the flashy hire, I do agree he's a very solid hire for South Carolina.
Well, one thing with Shane Beamer that sets him apart from others, for one, he's a younger guy. You look at North Carolina. You got Matt Brown coming in. He is a very solidified head coach. He's a guy that's got a track record. But Shane Beamer is a guy that South Carolina, in a lot of ways, is giving him a chance.
Yeah.
And I think one thing important here is that the fan base doesn't say, after 3 years, oh, we haven't won the East.
Well,
we're not winning 9 games.
I was just about to say, how far?
Don't run him off too fast.
How far, as a South Carolina fan and the South Carolina fan base, how many years do you? How many years do you give him to succeed before you try to move on? I mean, what's your opinion on that?
I say at least 5. At least 5. Well, Muschamp got, I think it was 6 with Muschamp. So I would say at least 5 for him. I mean, he is coming and saying, the Nick Muses and those who have hung around and are giving it one more year. He said, we're not. This isn't this is a rebuild year.
Right.
He's saying we're here to win today. And I mean, whether that translates or not, we'll see starting September 4th.
Right.
But he fully believes that he can turn South Carolina around. Now, how quickly that happens, what happens, I don't know. But I don't want to hijack the podcast, but I will say this much.
We got you here for
talking about Dabo Swinney, and he didn't know much as a head coach. He was kind of coming in fresh to this, just like Shane Beamer. But he surrounded himself with good coaching staff.
Yeah.
If you look at the staff that he has brought in, look at Marcus Satterfield on the offensive coordinator side. Marcus Satterfield set under last year Joe Brady at the Carolina Panthers. We all know what Joe Brady can do in college football.
For sure.
A prolific offense. Look at his defensive coordinator, Clayton White, out of Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky was the number 28 defense in the nation last year and the number 25 defense in the nation the year before that, and led the nation. They were in the top 5 for other categories on the defensive side. He's bringing in experienced guys who know how to win, and not to mention his offensive side of being under Lincoln Riley for several years, and here with Spurrier. I mean, the guy between the two of them, the offensive side is covered, the defensive side is covered. I'm very excited about the coordinators that he has brought in.
And that's one thing in our other video that we've discussed. And I'm sure you're a subscriber. You watch us.
Yeah.
That we've talked about that Dabo, and don't get me wrong, is not a great per se head coach, such as Nick Saban is, an X and O's guy.
And let me butt in real quick. I somewhat disagree with that. I don't think he's not a Lincoln Riley X's and O guy. He's not a Nick Saban X's and O guy. But he has a lot more to do with the offense than people want to give him credit for.
Right.
They always want to talk about, you got a great offensive coordinator, you got a great defensive coordinator, you're just a CEO. And I agree. And there's two types of head coaches. There's the CEO, the X's and O guy. But I think he's more hands-on than the offense than people want to give him credit for.
Right. But that's not where I was going with that. Dabo surrounds
John things.
Dabo has surrounded himself with good guys that make him look good.
That's a big deal.
That's a huge deal. So I mean, if I'm just telling you, if you take Brent Venables away and you take Chad Morris away from Clemson, Dabo's not what he was.
Well, we were mentioning that earlier. One thing, and this is getting off topic a little bit, one thing that's benefited Dabo's success, and I'm not saying that if these guys were to leave, he would drop off. I think Dabo's a great head coach.
I don't know, too.
And Dabo's leadership is honestly different. A lot of guys, your player messes up, we're cussing you out, we're yelling at you.
Right.
It's like a 80s and 90s approach to coaching. Dabo's different.
How is Beamer on that? Have you been able to see, is he more of the... Whereas, and I'll just use two different people. Whereas Dabo is the, I'm not going to get in your face and scream at you. I'm going to come and talk to you.
Unless you're Andy Teasdall, the punter.
Kirby Smart will scream at you.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So is Beamer more of that, or is he more of the Muschamp, Kirby Smart?
I'll cut you off there. Muschamp will cuss you out for dropping a ball in a heartbeat.
He will. That's what I'm at. So have you been able to see? And I know it's hard to see because this is first year, but have you been able to see any of that transition?
From what I can see, he's a very motivational guy. He's not a throw the clipboard, grab the headset, and throw it. From what I've seen, now I may be wrong about that. I'm not at the practices right now.
Yeah.
Wait till he gets a bad call and judge him on that one.
So I don't know how he's going to be. From what I can tell from his demeanor and stuff, he's going to be. I mean, he's a very high energy kind of guy.
He seems like it. Yeah.
But I don't think he's a rage Muschamp. Hit the chalkboard, slam the kind of guy. But I am excited about that.
That one time he looked at that player when he came back on the side, he's like,
I'll never forget that one clip of Muschamp
slamming the board
in halftime. He's drawing up the gap, and he's like, "It's gap control. Do your job." And he's banging on the chalkboard.
To backtrack a little bit, Dabo's definitely more of a rah guy, more of a motivational guy, kind of like you said. It seems Shane Beamer is. But there's two things to it. Just because, and again, I don't want to backtrack completely, but just because you surround yourself with great people, that's a part of the head coaching position.
It is, yes.
It's making great hires. But I would also ask you this, because I didn't get to ask this question, which is fine. But when he's talking about success, how many years, what's the leash on Shane Beamer? What defines success for you? Is it winning the East? Is it 8-4? Is it 9-3? But, I mean, Georgia's going to be hard to beat down the road. What is success for South Carolina under Shane Beamer?
Especially with the additions to Oklahoma, Texas coming. You never know what's going to happen.
I think the fan base is expecting a championship, not a national. I think they're expecting an SEC.
I think that's fair expectation.
They've seen us go there before in the 09, 10, 11, 12 stints. They've seen us get there before. Now, granted, we fell way off in the last several years.
Right.
But they've seen the potential there before. And, I think we can get there again. Now, one thing that nobody's really talking about is, I mean, we're seeing Muschamp. He went on an absolute tear in June recruiting-wise and even part of July. Just recruit, land. One thing that most people are not talking about is he was the recruiting coordinator whenever in 09 and 10, right before he left, he was the recruiting coordinator for South Carolina. Well, who brought in the guys? I mean, he was in the trenches with the Jadeveon Clowneys and all those people. And, one thing that I absolutely think is make or break for this team is we've talked about culture. You cannot put a price tag on the guys who are born in South Carolina, the Justin Steps, the Eric Kimrys, these guys who are born here. This is their state. This is their team. They want to see more than any guy you could say pay them $3 million to come in. These guys want to see them succeed, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get them there.
I think that is huge, having a hometown guy. It's different than just paying somebody, hey, come make our football program good.
Right.
Because they come in and it's all about the money. It's all about getting to the next step. But when you have a hometown guy, anytime you're wanting to see your home, because that's what you've been raised around. You're wanting to succeed, and to me, from what I've seen with Beamer, this is his dream job. This is what he's prepared his whole life for to get, and now he wants to succeed at it.
And that is what you see in Kirby Smart at Georgia.
Yeah.
And Sam Pittman at Arkansas. And even Ed Orgeron at LSU, though I'm not his biggest fan.
Yeah.
Justin Steph came from Arkansas. Just a little plug there.
One thing with the culture change, we'll talk about that and the buy-in. Remember Draymond Green said in an interview, they're like, do you really believe you're the best player in basketball? And we all know Draymond Green's not the best player in basketball. But he pretty much said it in a short way of saying it, I'm going to play and believe that I am.
Right.
And one day, maybe I will be.
If you don't believe, if he doesn't believe in it, nobody else is going to.
I tell people this a lot. I'm going to believe that I'm the best at whatever. Mm-hmm. Whatever you want to be the best at, believe you're the best at.
I agree.
Because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else is. And South Carolina lines up against Bama tomorrow. Saban's probably yawning.
Yeah.
But South Carolina probably, in their own mind, believes they can win that game.
Right.
That speaks
and here's the thing.
a big deal of
John's made this statement before, just in previous conversations. Does culture change result in wins on the field? Not necessarily.
Talent matters.
But I think it's a start.
And honestly, I would say I think it's probably the most important thing.
I do.
Because you saw Clemson when Dabo first started really getting the ball rolling. We weren't the most talented team, but we pulled off the upsets.
Right.
We were able because he had such a great culture. Culture is very important. But to go back real quick, and you said success to you under Shane Beamer is an SEC championship game. So let's say we know Georgia's not going anywhere down the road. The SEC is always the SEC. Mm-hmm. Texas and Oklahoma coming in. So let's say the next 4 years y'all go 7-5, 8-4, 8-4, 7-5. The fifth year y'all go 8-4, but y'all just can't seem to beat Georgia. Y'all just
you can't beat those big teams.
Is that enough, or what would the situation be like? Do you think?
We'd have to evaluate it. I mean, I really.
Right, it's hard to answer.
We don't know what's coming with. I mean, they can move Alabama and Auburn over to the east.
Right.
They can move. I don't know.
That
so I mean, if they put Alabama in the east, you're facing Florida, Georgia, Alabama every single.
But let's just say you're facing the same schedule that you have now, and you're going 8-4, 7-5, 9-3, but you still can't get over.
You just can't get over that Georgia hump.
I think you have to give them a little bit longer.
And I agree. I agree.
But
I agree. 100%.
I don't know.
Same thing with Kirby.
We know there's going to have to be changes with the additions of Oklahoma and Texas. There's going to have to be changes. So I don't think it's going to stay the same regardless. Either we're getting Oklahoma and Texas on the east, or we're getting Alabama and somebody else. So,
right.
This is the thing that gets me, and you see this with a lot of schools, and Tennessee's in that right now. They fire their head coach, and then they just bring a new guy in, and 2 years later, he hasn't done anything different. He's gone.
They fire him.
And then now you have nowhere to turn. There's not but a handful of elite coaches in college football. And at some point, you have to reach out to somebody and say, you know what, man, we're going to put some stock in you. We're going to give you a chance, and we believe in you.
Give you a bit of a lead.
So this year at Carolina,
Georgia did with Kirby.
I know you'll have, of course, a new head coach. Are y'all? Who else do y'all have new on the coaching staff?
We literally the only person we retained was and it's I'm losing it. His last name's Peterson. He was the linebacker coach. He's the only one we retained, other than from that I know of. It. We may have retained some smaller guys, but the overhaul.
Yeah, head offensive coach, defensive, all that's new.
Right.
And you know that needed to happen. You just needed to blow that.
The whole culture was toxic. I mean, the players have spoke on it. I mean, every player, we've got. The strength and conditioning coach Luke Day is doing a phenomenal job. The players are talking about how much different their bodies are this year. They're built. Rick Sanders is a senior this year. He said the past 3 years, my parents have said you're fat. He said I walked in the other week and they said, "What happened to you?" And literally, Luke Day is transformed.
Yeah.
I know we're running. We've
already. No, you're good. You're good. We're good.
If we have to do this in a part 2, we will.
I would like to at some point today cover the positions at Carolina because we obviously know Carolina is not deep in a lot of positions. We're very young in a lot of positions. I'd like to cover that at some point, and then look at potentially the schedule and get I'll give you my opinion as Georgia and Clemson fans.
Yeah, well,
I would like to see your
let's
input
look at their
on that.
positions.
Well, if y'all want, and I don't care about editing anything of this out. If y'all want, we can go for however long.
Yeah, if it goes too long, we just split.
We can do a part 2 and post it Monday.
Yeah,
I'm with that.
And just to continue talking and reach back to what we touched on in the culture change and the buy-in. I believe if you have 100%, everybody says give 110%. You can't. You give 100%. If you have 100%, you have to make up that percentage of what makes a head coach. I believe probably 60% of that in college football is recruiting.
Right.
I believe probably 30% of that is buy-in and fit. And how you fit with that team, who believes in you, who you believe in. 10% of that, I believe, is in-game coaching from a head coach.
Yeah.
And included in that fit is who you put around you.
Right.
And the big thing is who you put around you, because here's the thing. I don't care who your head coach is. If your DB coach is terrible, your DB's ain't going to play good. If your quarterback coach is terrible, he's not developing. If your O-line coach is terrible, he's not developing. And in a game, there's only so many adjustments you can make. You have to put the right guys around you. And the thing that interests me about Shane Beamer is it seems like you don't really know how these guys are going to pan out.
Right.
But it seems like he believes in the guys around him.
Yeah.
He absolutely does. And, I mean, he did bring in some. I mean, none of them are high profile. You don't recognize them necessarily. But, like the Torian Gray DB coach at Florida, coached some great DBs, C.J. Henderson, some of them at Florida. Justin Stepp, Arkansas, turned out some great receivers out of Arkansas. Clayton White, Western Kentucky, great defenses at Western Kentucky. You know, Marcus Satterfield coming out of following a rule to Carolina, and then here. I mean, you just got, there's so many. He's brought good pieces in. Montario Hardesty, great running back coach. I mean, I think he's done a great job of bringing in the pieces, and he hasn't, you know, he didn't bring in a name so big that it overpowers him almost. Like, he didn't bring in a name that when they think about the coordinators, it's the flashy name.
Right.
But he brought in people who can get the job done and who want to be there. Everybody there is hungry. They have something to prove. Every single one of them do.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He's surrounded himself with great
and I'll say
people.
this just real quickly. When Georgia's defensive coordinator, Mel Tucker, he was a nationally known guy. He left. Kirby Smart promotes Dan Lanning from the linebacker, I believe, group to the defensive coordinator. And even people on the staff were like, Kirby, what are you doing? What are you doing? And Kirby Smart basically said in the press conference, they kept asking him, who are these guys? Tell us about them. Kirby's, look, I got nothing on them. I believe in these guys, and that's all that matters. And as long as Shane Beamer believes in these guys, it doesn't really matter what the fan base knows, what college football knows. It matters what they do on the field. And a year from now, these guys may be known nationally, at least a handful of them.
Yeah, and as crazy as it sounds as a Clemson fan, South Carolina's proven that they can win. You did it under Steve Spurrier. You can win at South Carolina, but it's better for Clemson, for South Carolina
For sure.
to be a better
for
team.
college football.
Absolutely, because I mean, Clemson gets ragged on enough about their schedule.
Yeah.
If we have a top 25, top 15 South Carolina, that's only going to benefit Clemson in the long run. If beating them in the rivalry.
Well, as a Georgia fan, Carolina-Georgia play, I hope that your whole team is throwing up on the sideline and we're just killing you. But and I hope you win all your other games because I want the East to get better.
Right.
Yeah.
Carolina's kind of like Miami. It's better. College football is better when you're good.
All right, so tell us a little bit about your players, Landon, as far as your quarterbacks, your
If you
running
want to
backs.
try to get the schedule pulled up if you want.
Yeah, I can while
So-
he's doing that.
So where we are kind of with positions wise, at the quarterback position, obviously we know
Doty.
Luke Doty is the name starter. I would not sleep though on Jason Brown. He's a transfer in. He came in with E.J. Jenkins, a big, tall tight end / wide receiver
Where's he
guy.
from?
Oh my goodness, it's a little bit small
little
school.
small
I can't
school.
I can't remember it right now. A little bitty small school, transferred in. He spun it very well in the spring game. He's not mobile like Doty is, but he can spin it. And we saw him throw several TD passes to E.J. Jenkins in the spring game. So if Doty, I'm expecting big things out of Doty. What Marcus Satterfield and what I've been hearing out of them is that Doty has improved and he's become obsessive with the game and obsessive with the little things. He says, I was watching an interview with Doty the other day, and he said whenever he watches himself, he doesn't look at his throwing motion. He looks at his hips and his feet and the way he plants. So he's obsessive with it. So be interested to see what Doty does this year. I hope he's not scared. I think toward the end of last year, he was almost scared to run the ball because he was scared they were going to say something about, oh, you just tuck it and run.
Yeah.
So I think he almost was scared to run
He
it.
wants to be known as a passer.
Right, exactly. So Doty at quarterback, obviously Jason Brown backup. Should be interesting to see that conversation. Jason Brown was fourth on the depth chart, has worked his way all the way to the second slot. In the running back room, I personally believe we have one of the best running back rooms in the nation, definitely in the SEC.
No doubt.
Y'all
on that
definitely
one. I'll
have
give you
one
that,
of the
no doubt.
better running back tandems between Kevin Harris and Marshawn Lloyd.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And we
No
don't
doubt.
know what Marshawn Lloyd's
Right.
going to do yet because he was injured. But, I
But
mean,
we
the
know
guy,
his ceiling is
Potential.
high.
absolutely. We've seen him move at practice this year. He looks just as healthy as he did last year. He was the starter over Kevin Harris going into the season last year before his injury, and we saw Kevin Harris absolutely just tear the SEC and the whole. I mean, it was all SEC schedule last year, and he tore it to pieces. I mean,
Right.
he was the leading SEC rusher going into the playoffs and all that, and that Najee took that at that point. But Kevin Harris, Marshawn Lloyd, absolute great tandem. Zaquandre White's not a bad third either to rotate in.
A lot of that with an injury like that depends on the player and the mentalness of it. Can he get out there and run and not think about that knee?
Right.
And one thing with Zamir White at Georgia, I know he's talented, but he's had those injuries, and it's like there's a mentalness to it. So we're just going to pick at the schedule here.
Yeah, that Jason Brown, he was from Fredericksburg, Virginia, out of St. Francis, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, St. Francis, that's it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, a lot of people sleep on these transfers, and just because they weren't known nationally, such as JT Daniels,
and he's a redshirt senior.
And they
pretty big guy, 6'3", 229. Yeah, pretty big guy.
Speaking further about the positions there, so you've got the wide
in
the wide receiver room. That is by far the biggest question mark. Is the wide receiver and the DB room.
You lost a lot.
Yeah, I mean we haven't had anybody really step up. We've lost in the past 3 years. We have Brian Edwards, Debo, and Shot, all three, and we've had some talent. But now, who's the guy?
Would you say Nick Muse is your best as far as a receiving core?
Absolutely. I would say he is the best as of right now from what I've heard. We've got De'Carrion Joyner. They're saying he's flashing. We'll see. He's obviously transferred from QB to wide receiver, but he's an athletic guy. They're saying Jalen Brooks is looking good. He was a good transfer in last year. Supposed to shine. He had several drops last year. Never really panned out. So Jalen Brooks. You got De'Carrion Joyner. So we got, and then you got Ortre Smith. He's been there for years. Josh Vann, they both have been there several years. Josh Vann was a high 4-star coming out of high school, but he's just not proven that he can be the guy. Can he prove that this year? By far the best receiving group is the tight end group. You've got Nick Muse. You've got Jaheim Bell, which is a freak athlete who you lined up in the running back slot.
He's a good first name.
You
got that guy at Bama too, I believe.
Jahill
Jahil, dude. It's a good first name.
He even lined up at running back in the spring game a little bit. And then you've got E.J. Jenkins, 6'7", 6'8".
That's a good name too.
Tight end / wide receiver. So that, and then the offensive line is we've got some guys who are older, some guys who are younger. It's going to be a good offensive line. Flip to the defensive side of the ball. I don't know if y'all want me to roll right into defense.
Yeah, no, you can go ahead.
Roll on the defense side. At corner, oh my goodness, I don't know what. And let's get the rumor mill going.
You also have two studs.
We lost JC and Israel. Two absolute. We all know what JC's got. Israel, he's most known for his 3 picks in the Georgia game, obviously. But other than that, we never really saw him do a ton. He made it. I gotta get it in. I gotta get it in. You know, I gotta get those shots.
For any Georgia fans watching this, I'm no Jake Fromm fan.
I'm a Rodrigo Blankenship fan that game as well.
I'm sure you
are.
But that was a terrible day. I almost threw up watching that game.
That was a bad game for y'all. But
respect the specs, baby.
Like
the amount of trash I talked that week too.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I heard it all week long. But going back to that, the DB room. This is where the rumor mill comes in. Right before I got here, actually.
That's what I want to hear.
Karon, and I'm gonna butcher his name. Karon Prunty, the transfer from Kansas, the All-American last year, who left Kansas and transferred to South Carolina. It is rumored that he is off the team as of a little while ago. Mike Uva, who is big in South Carolina, claims that he is close to sources. It's not true. Is flying around. They don't know if it's he left or he got kicked off, or I don't know. We'll see how this pans out.
Right.
But he was by far the most experienced guy. I mean, freshman.
Was he probably going to start?
He was. Yeah, he was with the first stringer so far at practice.
Okay.
In fall
What's
camp.
his name?
Karon Prunty.
Okay.
I'll say this: when it comes to rumors in fall camp, a lot of the time they're fake.
I hope so.
Oh yeah.
There has been in the last week with Georgia rumors that Eric Gilbert got injured, completely fake. Practice today. Rumors that we had a corner get injured, completely fake. Practice today. You can have a lot of that go on.
So you got Karon Prunty, then you got Cam Smith. He's been there a couple of years. It's his year to step up in JC slot. And he claims he can. We'll see what he can do. At the safety position, you got R.J. Roderick, who he's been there several years. He set out the last part of the year last year, but he came back. We'll see what he's got. And he's at the safety position. Jamar Brown's transferred back to the safety position from a linebacker. He's slim and kind of running a middle ground.
Where's our timer at?
So you got,
just out of curiosity.
you've got. That's kind of where our DB room. Now the strength of the defense is by far the D line,
right?
And even the linebacker. In the D line, you've got Zach Pickens, 5-star. You got
your D line, at least talent wise, is star.
And the last few years, y'all have had a very good D line.
Right. Very consistent D line, which makes me curious of the replacement there of the coach. Why? Unless I don't know the situation there, but he obviously was doing something.
The guy who came in, Jimmy Lindsey, was actually with Clayton White at Western Kentucky, and he left there and went. I forget where he went now.
Okay.
And then he ended up. Clayton White brought him back in with him.
Well, I'll ask you about that D-line linebacker group just because I know Jordan Birchwell, because obviously that was a really Clemson South Carolina battle there at the end. And Jordan Burch didn't really do much last year, but obviously, I mean, he's a true freshman. Have you heard anything about Burch?
I will say this on Burch. That really one game I watched Carolina was against Georgia, and Burch did make a few plays that game. The little bit I saw,
he didn't have a Clowney. I mean, we all kind of expected him to come in and have a Clowney, but he's not. He looked okay. He looked at it. Sometimes he shines. Sometimes you're like, what are you doing out there?
That's a freshman.
True freshman. Right. So you've got, and I mean, we played a 10-game SEC schedule last year. So I mean, he got pounded.
Right. And he didn't have spring.
Yeah.
And,
right.
Oh yeah. I mean,
last year was weird.
It was weird.
Hard to judge,
especially for freshmen.
Right.
And is he listed as a starter this year, or is he still going to be with the second team?
I think he's listed as a starter. We're running a weird, a different.
You got about 25 days of luck.
So,
and probably rotate a lot of guys in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with D lines, there's big guys. You got to keep them rotated. They're rushing the passer. So you got Jordan Burch, you got Zach Pickens, 2 5-stars.
Yep.
Jordan Strachan, who just transferred in. He's from Georgia State. He was second or third in the nation last year in sacks. You got JJ Ngarbe returning, who led the SEC in sacks last year. Absolute beast. So you got all that. You've got Keir Thomas back again for one final go. He's been a consistent throughout the years. You got Sherrod Green returning in the linebacker position. He's been a stable, just a faithful guy in that position. You've got a lot of guys returning in that position. The DBs is definitely shaky, absolutely shaky. I'm worried about us getting absolutely torched on the outside. But if they're going to come up the middle, they may run all over us. Georgia may come and just run all over us. I don't know. But they're going to have to come through some big guys in that center.
Yeah. All right, let's very quickly look through the schedule right quick. Just kind of and we won't give our opinions.
We can go ahead and do that.
Okay.
I mean, it's probably not going to hurt our game day episode.
So South Carolina starting out with Eastern Illinois. I think we can all unanimously say that's a loss. I think we can all say that.
Shane Beamer's fired.
You know what that would remind me of, Dallas? I guess it was 2 years ago. Whenever Carolina was squaring off against North Carolina in the opener, and I was like, "No way, we
Storm Duck."
Yeah, I think that's one thing that Atlanta can say. I mean, you won't be saying it this year. There's no way we could lose that game.
I'll tell you what. I will never forget because I was at my dream job of Dollar General. And they lost that game, and Dave and Dallas called me, and they were freaking out.
I was at Outback.
I was so happy.
I was at Outback.
So Eastern Illinois, they're winning.
I'll never forget that.
They're winning that one. At East Carolina, they're winning that.
2-0.
They're 2-0. Then they go to Georgia. That's 2-1. Kentucky at home.
Kentucky's not. I
know
David
they've got Kentucky at home. I don't see them losing this.
I don't
something goes bad. Kentucky and Carolina are very even.
Yeah, I give them a win. So
I'm going 2-2.
3-1.
Okay.
I'm giving them a win at home here.
Okay, Troy, I'm giving them a win.
Giving them a win.
So as of right now, they're 4-1, 3-2 at Johns. At Tennessee, I'm giving them
going to Tennessee.
At Tennessee, I'm giving them a win.
Tennessee has lost absolutely everybody.
They have.
I work. One of my guys who works for me at my job, he actually lives in Knoxville. He's a diehard Tennessee fan. And he is literally like, we're going to be terrible. I mean, they lost everybody. With the McDonald's money bags, they lost everybody.
They're not going to be very good.
You got to think, I have heard some good things. Obviously, Harrison Bailey, he was a pretty highly touted guy. He didn't play great last year. And then they got Joe Milton from Michigan, who has all the measurables and all the talent in the world, but he didn't really put it together in Michigan. So they could potentially have somebody break out a quarterback, but I agree. Tennessee is an absolute
So what do you give them, John? I give them win.
I'm going to give Carolina the win here. If Tennessee wins, it's not going to shock me. It's hard to go to Neyland and win.
I agree. Neyland is a tough place to play.
And though they got gutted by the portal, terribly by the portal, and just absolutely dumps fire, they still stout a pretty decent offensive line and expecting very good things. Maybe not great, but solid things out of the quarterback.
So right now I've got him at 5-1. He's at 4-2. 5-1.
Yeah.
Then they go Vanderbilt at home. I'm giving them another win.
So lose that game, something bad happens.
So 6-1. John's at 5-2. And this is where South Carolina.
This is where I think you could potentially
the rubber meets.
So they go to A&M.
We're losing that. A&M has had our number since they came to us.
6-2.
I've got them a loss too. So at 6-2. They got Florida at home. That's a toss-up game.
That's because Florida is such a question mark this year.
They could be terrible, or they could be
really
top 10.
good. Yeah, so that'll definitely be hard.
So
that'll be easier to know.
What are you saying, Landon?
I can't say right now.
It's hard to say right now.
I'm being a Carolina fan right now, so I'm gonna say win.
Right.
But we'll have to see because I mean they're without the Kyles, Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts. I mean that was their staple.
Oh, they got gutted.
I'm gonna go out on a limb too. I'm gonna give them a win against Florida, at home, being Shane Beamer's really first big game at home.
I'm gonna go out here
because they went to Georgia, to Tennessee, and to A&M. This is their first big game at home. I'm gonna give them a win.
I'm gonna be really honest with you. It's hard for me to not throw in some bias here.
Yeah.
But this is a fact. Last year against Florida, easily could have won that game. As bad as Carolina was, the year before, watched it on my phone as I was
literally
driving,
gave them the game.
as I was driving to go to Georgia and watch a game there in Athens. Should have won that game.
Yeah.
Refs and Carolina didn't help themselves out toward the end. Carolina's had Florida's number, and even last year on the road, I'm gonna give Carolina this one. But depending on what their season looks like, their wins have probably stopped.
So right now I've got them at 7-2.
Because Carolina
at 6-3.
Carolina always has that one game.
Yeah.
Where they probably aren't supposed to win, but they also have that one.
And we are supposed to win with football.
So
and with a new head coach, you have
then
to
they
assume.
they go to Missouri. I've got them losing that game.
I do too.
Yeah. I've got them there too. And though the talent level is not a whole lot different,
yeah,
you have to assume you got a really young staff, really new guys. Sooner or later, you can't just assume because everything's new, you're going to just go out.
And Missouri is one of those SEC teams that it's kind of it reminds me of a bit of an Iowa in the Big Ten. They're always solid. They're not necessarily elite, but they're always a solid.
And
team.
Connor Bazelak is nothing to shake a stick at.
Here's where I am with that. Those two games, I split them.
Right.
We're either beating Florida or beating Missouri. I don't think we lose both of them.
I can accept that, but I wouldn't be shocked to see you lose both of them.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't either. I don't, like I said, we don't know what South Carolina.
Right.
I mean, we can imagine.
This is just speaking off of what we think.
So I'm saying 7-3 at the end of that stretch.
Yeah.
Splitting Florida or Georgia.
If they lose at A&M, and they're going to lose at A&M unless something happens, and it could. It's college football. Shane Beamer is going to either beat Florida at home or die trying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then you have Auburn at home. I'm giving them a loss.
I'm going to give you a loss here.
And I think that's a potential win for South
You could win that game. And if you win that game, that is when now your season is going from,
oh my goodness,
hey, we didn't just do
Yeah.
okay, we exceeded.
Especially if they split Missouri and Florida. And I mean, Bo Nix regressed terribly from his freshman to sophomore year.
It's gonna be and he loses a lot of weapons.
Now I like their coaching hire. They got the Boise State head coach. He did great things at Boise State. I do like that hire.
I think Tate Bisbee, one of the better running backs in the nation.
But I mean, Bo Nix, if he regresses even more, that could be a possible win.
And then you end the season with Clemson.
Could you imagine if
my take on Auburn is this?
Yeah.
I don't know if we win or lose that game. I think there could be enough hatred for
Did y'all beat Auburn last year?
No. But we did play them.
Just curious.
They played them close, yeah.
I know y'all had their number.
I don't think we kept it too close. I think they kind of ran away with that at the end. I can't remember the score. But I do remember that was the only game JC had his two interceptions he had his entire career was against Elijah Moore in that game. But going back to Auburn, Mike Bobo's there now. I don't know.
No, y'all lost. Y'all beat Auburn last year.
Auburn?
I thought they did.
30-22.
Oh, we did. I forgot about that.
Y'all beat Auburn last year.
So it's so hard to and I've done this a lot. Looking back on last year, thinking of the year before because of COVID.
So, but going back to that, Mike Bobo's at Auburn now.
Yeah.
If he does anything like he did at Carolina, Bo Nix is going to be a statue standing in the backfield.
Bobo might be washed.
You're going to see. So I don't know what Auburn does, and I know we're losing to Clemson. No questions asked. Georgia, Clemson, A&M are guaranteed losses on my list. Any of the others, there's 5 or 6, probably those first 6 we mentioned. There's 6 in there that I think are wins more likely. So I think we get to 6 wins. Now where we go from 6 wins, we could go 6-6, or we could go all the way to 8.
I think if you win 7 or 8 games, I think you should be very
successful.
I'll be tickled to death.
Even 6-6, y'all coming from a 4-8 to a 2-5. If y'all go 6-6 this year, that's something to hang your hat on.
Yes,
not only
Shane Beamer.
And then you're happy. You're saying we made the right decision.
And I don't really know with that, John. I mean, you've improved.
But in the same thing, if you go 5-7, it's okay.
But your 6 wins weren't against anybody special.
And that's fair, but at the same time,
but for a program who was on their last leg,
right? When you go from 4-8, 2-5 to 6-6, and
I agree,
their schedule's easier this year.
Right.
You're happy.
But I definitely think you're happy at 7-5 because you won the games you were supposed to.
I think you should be happy at 6-6.
Yeah, you won the games you were supposed to at 6-6, and then 7-5. beating a team
And
that gave you problems
Yeah,
before.
and I'm gonna hate if they go 8-4 because the hype for the next season, if they can go 8-4,
Yeah.
win 2 of the games.
But that
I would love it.
But that looks good for Clemson, though, like you
No,
said.
absolutely.
It makes Georgia look better.
This is what
I'm just
scares
talking
me.
off
Though.
season. It's gonna
That
suck.
is what scares me. Is I do not want to see us get to a 9-4 like we did under Muschamp, and then 7-6, 4-8, and then just regress.
Yeah.
Keep going
So-
down.
Just regress all the way back. So I don't.
College football would be better if South Carolina had top
Absolutely.
25.
And
So-
can you remember that far back real quickly? Like in 2017, was it like an easy schedule type thing, or was it
That
really
was-
that good?
That was Jake Bentley. I believe that was his
Was that
freshman
the year?
That
Year
was
John,
the year he actually
2017?
played.
That
like
was
he
the year that Jake.
quarterback.
That's whenever we were like high on
Well,
Jake.
was that the year that he absolutely shredded our secondary? Because I thought it was 2018 when we
No,
won the Natty.
in 2017, South Carolina lost to Clemson.
Okay, yeah,
And then that's the year that they beat Michigan in the
Right.
Outback Bowl.
Okay,
South Carolina's also
2018 is the
5
year that
years,
Jake
so-
Bentley
Yeah.
destroyed our secondary.
Yeah. And that was Jake Bentley's year was that year, and then the rest has been. I mean, the rest of this has been a wash. It's been an unstable quarterback. It's been an unstable. The coaches are just there for the money. I'm excited to see what South Carolina's going to be in the future. It may be bust.
Yeah.
Maybe a total bust. But
And I'll say this about South Carolina: as big a rival as we are, I love college football.
Yeah.
You have one of the better atmospheres in college football.
Absolutely. No.
You have
no.
one of the more involved fan bases.
Yep.
You have one of the better stadiums.
facilities.
You have a
are,
good brand.
Our facilities are almost second to none. The new the new facilities we have down there are. I mean, the NFL players. Let me speak on this. I know we're running out of time.
Yeah,
One thing that I
We'll
have
have the
seen.
two-parted anyway.
One,
two-part
one
it.
thing I have seen with Carolina since Shane Beamer came back that is absolutely when I say culture change, this is what I'm seeing. The players who have for the last 5 and 6 years since Muschamp has been there has not showed up. They're back. The
Right.
DJ Swearingers, all those players, the Alshon Jeffries, those players are coming back around the program, and they're saying, South Carolina, this is the place to be.
Yeah.
Michael Vick was there earlier this week. He's had some big names come in.
They've been fighting dogs.
Yeah, something like that.
Fight chickens.
Fighting
Yeah.
chickens.
Fighting chickens.
Fighting
I mean,
chickens,
yeah, exactly. But so he's brought in some good speakers to speak to the team, and the players are coming back around. And that is the biggest thing to me is you get the guys back involved. I mean, look at who he put Connor Shaw on the staff. Connor Shaw, bar none, next to George Rogers, who won the Heisman, and probably Marcus Lattimore. And I think you put Connor in the same category, Marcus. Connor is going to be the most renowned football player ever to play at South Carolina.
Yeah.
He never lost at home. Never.
Yeah. Big win against Alabama.
Yeah.
No, that was Garcia.
That was Garcia.
That was
You're
drunk
right.
Garcia who
Yeah.
did.
That was
That
drunk
was
Garcia that come out on the field like that. Yeah.
Garcia is a legend.
He was a legend. He was.
Oh,
So,
goodness.
but yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap that up. Landon.
yeah,
Well,
So-
thank y'all for the opportunity to be on. and
Yeah,
talk about
for
South
sure.
Carolina.
So
sure.
can Shane Beamer turn that? And similar to the Georgia question, is it now or never? It's such a
It is.
broad and a
Yeah.
vast question.
Can
It's a
Shane
hard
Beamer?
one to answer.
Can Shane Beamer do it? I think he can.
Will he? Is the question.
Will he? But I think from a non-Clemson bias standpoint, I think you started off on the right track.
No doubt. And the thing is, it depends on what your desire is and what your expectations are. Because we talk about the Bama factor. Everybody just suspects now to be the next dynasty.
Yep.
As a Georgia fan, give me a natty every 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and I'd be thrilled on my
Yeah.
mind.
Should you give me one,
There-
Matty?
and that's
Good
what
for him.
and that's what we have to
I'm the
remember.
same
Good
way,
for
man.
life.
That's what we have to remember. There is still good 10-2 seasons.
Well,
Yeah,
think
it-
about teams like Cincinnati.
Yeah.
They're not in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But they're a respected,
and it's
very
going
good
to be
team.
hard. Just being honest, it's going to be hard for South Carolina to get to the standpoint of Georgia, Alabama,
that's
Clemson,
exactly-
Ohio State, Oklahoma.
And the thing is,
it's gonna
I
be
don't
hard.
think that's fair expectations.
No, it's
But
not.
what
it's
is
not.
fair is top 25.
It's
And-
not.
And
Top
that's
15.
exactly what I was about to say. With the can he turn South Carolina around? And I do believe he can. I think that really was a solid hire for South Carolina, but it's going to be hard. Georgia's not going nowhere.
Yep.
Alabama's not going nowhere. As long as they
Especially
stay
with
there.
Oklahoma and Texas.
Oklahoma and
coming in.
Oklahoma, Texas. It's not going to be easy.
And like
at
you
all.
mentioned, I think Oklahoma and Texas come in, and Alabama and Auburn come in.
And what I want to add to that is
East rather.
Clemson is the only dynasty really. I mean, we've seen Oklahoma rise, Ohio State rise, but Clemson has been the only real dynasty to rise in the latter
That's
years.
Right.
true.
And
That's
the
true.
reason, and I'm not throwing off
That could
on
be
the
a
ACC,
video.
even
Is
though we throw off on the
Clemson a
ACC.
dynasty?
The ACC is probably the only conference that a team could really rise
And
to the
I
top.
can
and
agree with
I can
hold
agree
it.
with that.
Because in the SEC, I mean, we've got to go through Bama and Georgia
Yep.
every single year to try and get
And,
you're
there.
and that's
Carolina,
what
I
I
agree with
hope.
that. That's
I
fine.
hope Carolina fans and college football fans in general don't put those expectations on Beamer to say, well, he hasn't built a national championship program in 5 years. Throw him out.
That's the thing with Kirby Smart
I
at
don't think they
Georgia.
will either.
I can absolutely promise you the expectation for Kirby Smart
Is a
is
national.
a national championship.
Yeah, if he doesn't win one in the next 5 years, he's gone.
The
I think.
expectation. Oh, I agree. The expectation for Shane Beamer should be a top 25 team within a few years.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
And then in the next 5 years, competing for a SEC championship.
if some things go right, when this year ends, Carolina could be in the 20 to 25 range.
Yeah, good.
And if Carolina has a number beside their name when they
that's
played
that's
their bowl game,
definitely a success.
Shane Beamer is automatically chalked up as a good hire. And if he ever gets them to the SEC championship or even the playoffs, he's a legend.
Yeah.
He'll be a
So-
Spurrier type.
So like I said, can he? Sure, because that is a broad question. Will he is the real question, and you never know what the future holds.
Yep.
But I'm not gonna say he's been handed the keys to a Ferrari, like Kirby Smart or Ryan Day.
Yep.
But he's probably been handed the keys to probably a used, pretty nice vehicle.
Yeah.
Soup it up, fix
Put
it
some
up.
work into it.
You've got something. He's got a good fan base, a good program, good facilities, and South Carolina has good assets as far as recruiting. But we appreciate you watching.
Let us know what
And,
you think about
And
Carolina.
Landon, if you like Landon, he's not going to be a stranger to us.
He'll be back on.
around,
Yeah.
and as long as, especially if this gets some good views.
Yeah.
That's right.
And
Hope
so
it's-
hopefully there's a good amount of Carolina fans that are going to watch this video. So let us
we
know
know
what you
you're
think.
out there.
So drop some thoughts in the comments.
They
what
may
y'all
be drunk,
think.
but
And don't
like
hate,
and
don't hate
subscribe.
on me if I said anything off tonight.
Yeah, they
Please
will.
absolutely thrash him in the comments.
I've learned one thing in the slight few weeks we've done this is that you
If
say
you're
something
wrong,
wrong,
they're gonna cut.
they're gonna let you know. But like we said, I'm here for it.
Yeah,
I
for
love
sure.
it. I love
So let us know your thoughts on the hire and all that goes on. But catch us next
Till
time.
next time, keep talking ball.